Our film begins with a group of police cars surrounding a house. And a group of officers with pistols and weapons disembarked and directed them towards the house. And the neighbors come out and watch them while they are holding one who is trying to tell them that there is something in the water, and there are still large stains on the face of the criminal. And the criminal tries to guess people from the window of the car while it is walking. And he tells them to beware of the water they use, but people don't listen or care about his words, and we go back in time 6 months, to Laura, to the beginning of the story and the intuition, and a little girl named Blooms while she is standing eating and her mother leans on her and asks her to wash her hands and lean on her sisters so that the food is ready, and at that time, Cyrus and Zikr her sisters are fighting, and their father stops them. He asks them to stop playing in the mud, shouts at them, and tells them that they must love some like any two sisters, by ordering them to greet each other, but Zaki refuses to greet Nisan and tells him that he is not his father, nor is he his brother to hear their words and love them, so they hit his father with a pen, and he commands him to change his clothes that have become dirty, and he goes to break his fast, and Alice stands far away watching the situation while she is sad. And you look at Zaki, who was upset. Didn't she see him in this situation? And the father sat on the table, thanking God for the blessings he gave them, and the whole family remained gathered on the table, except for Zach, who arrived late to the trip and was clearly sad. As for April, the father was commenting to Frances the mother about the food, telling her that the biscuits were dry, and she did not accept. Frances, as she finishes eating and hears Frances clacks. As an Arab, she decides to go and see who she is and meets Charlie, who is afraid of the dogs in front of the house and keeps yelling at Frances to keep her away. The dog is about him, and Frances laughs as she pushes away with a roof from her hand while he is standing on the bottom of the car out of fear and unable to move from his place. After Charlie comes down, he asks her for apples from their farm, so you tell him that the apples are still not ready, and they are not ready for a week, and when he asks about Frances, she tells him coldly that he is breaking his fast and does not want to talk to him after he abandoned him, and he does not want to stand with him in his cell. Charlie tells her that, on the contrary, he is trying to help him, because the family farm will never be the same again. And if he didn't hear his words and sell them, they would be auctioned off. So Frances responds to him nervously, telling him that Nisan has a problem, and that his crisis will pass and not the farm, and that Frances will return home. And you enter into Nisan, who was sitting calculating the debts. Nisan asks her about Zach and asks her to stop petting him so that he can get better, and at the same time this was Cyrus is watching them on TV and immersed in it, and Nisan asks Frances to adjust her clothes because there are children in the house. Frances feels embarrassed and tells him that she is going to see Alice. Nisan gets annoyed when Cyrus raises his voice in front of the TV, and he asks him to turn it off completely, so that he knows how to focus on his accounts. As for Frances, she goes to check on Alice and covers her, and you enter on Zach sitting reading alone in the room, so she sits with him and tells him that Nisan told her about what happened in the morning. Zaki complains to her that Nisan took a class and believed him when he lied to him and told him that they did not bother him, so Frances tries to convince him that Nisan is not standing in line, and Zach is surprised that he is a very intense personality in all his actions. Frances replies to him and tells him that people are different, and their personalities are not the same. And she knows that he is not like his father, but he is a good person, and asks him what. He forgets that because of him, they were able to have a home to live in after his father's death. And after everyone in the house sleeps, France goes out and goes to the room where the assistant of Nisan lives in the farm and cheats on Nisan with him, and suddenly there is a collision of a strange body in the farm and it burns the place, and everyone gets scared and runs to see what it is, and Zach runs to a doctor. His wife and I are their neighbors, and he bangs on them and tells them, and they meet the neighbors are with Zach's family at home after they look at the thing that fell from space and destroyed the farm, and they reassure Nisan that this thing is definitely not helpful, and they advise him to continue sleeping because it is late, and the second day in the morning he goes to a doctor to talk to him and tells him that he is not empty, but they ask the patient to take the now on the side. And he talks to him and asks him about the thing that happened in the land of April, so he says to him He speaks to the competent authorities, they come to see him, but he completely refuses and tells him that they do not want a shower, especially since this will cost them a lot of money in their work. Until now, none of them knows whether this is something harmful or normal, and these burgers will never benefit them. There is a strange thing, and they leave and walk, so he goes behind him and tries to explore the thing that is in reality, which is like a huge ball, and he says that this thing is shining and shining at night, and he saw it himself from the window of his room, that the trees were moving around him despite the absence of wind at the time, but they are teasing about Zach's words, and he does not believe him, and he returns a pen. I went home with Charlie after he examined this strange thing, and he says that he has never seen anything like it, even after reviewing all the academic books and trying. He guides him and tells him that the matter is not a big one, and a pen mirror winks at him from afar. And Charlie decides that he will wait for her time and leaves him and goes out and prefers vitriol all night to watch this thing and finds it very bright, and a strange liquid comes out of the place around it, and Zach approaches him and he is impressed and enters the vitriol machine again in the morning and tells them he discovered that this strange thing is not from space or anything, and that it is just a tank that fell from a plane, and they are not afraid of anything, and it appears on a pen that he is not convinced of the words he says, but Zach's machine believes him, and Zach feels very disappointed, as if he does not believe the words he said. And then we see the farm animals, and they are you drink water in a tank of water by spraying the crops, and a person riding a car enters the village. And it appears to him that he is a stranger and lost, and he comes out of the local authorities, and from a distance he sees an Arab car with the word authorities written on it, so he decides to leave his office and goes after him quickly, and the man of the authorities enters a hotel and asks for an empty room, while Francis was out on the farm, and you will find a lot of crops that ripen very quickly, and you can't believe that the vegetables are even and so big, so she cuts it off and takes it home with her on Saturdays, and you smell it and start cutting it, but you find it full of strange liquid and it smells bad, so you decide to quickly throw it in the trash, and she can't stand its smell or shape from the inside, and when you try to approach the tomatoes with comfort and cut them, you waste the world as soon as you touch them with a knife. At this time, Charlie enters the man of the authorities and storms his seat and asks him if he is responsible for the water project that will be used in their city. Charlie introduces him himself and tells him that he is in charge of the municipality here for 3 years. It's if he needs anything, and he is there and can help him, he takes him and makes him a tour of the city himself so that he can choose the place where he will build the water station project. He tries indirectly to convince him to see the land of Nissan so that he can profit from it. On the other hand, she sits at lunch and Francis fills water from the tap and puts it on the table. And Alice says that the water changed the taste of the vegetables, and Zaki says that he will not drink from it, and he upsets them, and he tells them that it is just ordinary water, there is no problem, and Francis tells them that it is the same water that they have been drinking for years. And Nissan gets angry and orders Zacko to not get up from the table except when they finish their dishes, and they drank all the water, and Francis remained at this time not feeling any change in food or water, and he ate voraciously and gluttonously, and after April he went out to the farm, and he was happy when he found ripe fruits. At that time, he hears the sound of his son's scream coming from afar, so he runs to him and finds the horse in an abnormal state, and they try to control it and return home, and he keeps swearing to Nissan that he didn't do anything to the horse to make him lose control and keep him from paying like this. On the other hand, he asks Sophia, his secretary, to write a contract for him so that he can go to Nissan to convince him to sell the farm. At that time, she goes to the chicken room and sees bird droppings everywhere, and the chicks are in a state of extreme agitation, and you try to throw them food. As usual, he enters Nissan and finds him picking the crops and collecting, and as soon as he sees Nissan, Charlie tells him that he heard rumors telling him that he is trying to help the government build a project for water tanks. This is the reason that made her go crazy and let them sell the farm, and he denies these rumors and tells him that this is just an old friend and he is coming to make sense. He helps him. Nissan explains to him that he is not interested in selling his farm so that he can understand. And no, he tells Charlie that he will regret his decision, and my hand has the smell of an apple to eat, but when he cuts it, he finds it full of worms inside. He gets angry and fights with Charlie, and his house is that he wants to name him, and throws him the apple and runs. They are very forgetful and hold a small knife and open an apple in his hand and find that it is really full of worms. The whole family runs to the chick's room after they heard her voice screaming, and they meet the chicks. And a doctor arrives and reassures them that he has given a sedative and she will sleep, and he advises them to let her rest in bed for 3 or 4 days, and he asks about the chicks and how they became agitated once like this. He is surprised and says that he does not know the reason, but she is definitely the one who annoyed them. So he intervenes and says that this is the same thing that happened with the horse yesterday when he attacked and objects to Zach's words and shouts at him and asks him not to interfere with something that does not concern him, and he is sad and tells them that if they need something, they talk to him at length. And you receive the whole Zach machine in front of the TV. He says that the water in the tank of the plane spoiled his entire crop. Huge pimples begin to appear on Francis's face, and who remains a rule that speaks to itself, tense and intolerant, and bare herself with the needle, and attacking, and those who try to remove it and take it to the room, and Zach runs to their neighbor, told him to call him quickly and go home with him, and they meet Nissan and Cyrus sitting in the hall, as if nothing happened, and they try to show that everything is perfect and deny that Francis is tired, and they say that she is exhausted, and she went out to relax in the room, and that Zach overreacted, and that they do not need a doctor or anything, and after he walks, he puts Nissan on Zach and hits him with pain, and they say that they do not involve any stranger in their personal problems. As for them, he decides to take from the water of the beer that is in the farm and analyze it, and Bimla empties small moose with him. Then, 2 of the official authorities come to inspect the land, and one of them enters the house because he is thirsty and cannot find anyone inside. So he grabs a glass of water, and before he drinks, Francis attacks him with a knife and quickly follows him, who shouts at him and accuses him of attacking people's homes. The man quickly leaves the house, terrified. As for Colum, he was in the laboratory at that time, taking a water sample for it to decompose, and the official asked him to leave his number so that they could talk to him when the result blooms. At home, Francis, whose face was full of huge pills, asked her son Zaki to finish eating it. But Zaki does not eat and shows Cyrus that he also has symptoms of pimples in his face. As for Nissan, he was deeply saddened, and he asks Zach to take a plate of food, and led him to his sister. In her bed, Zach takes the plate and throws it in the bathroom, and he and his son Cyrus discover when they go to the barn that all the cows are infected and full of worms being thrown in their faces, and Nissan goes out to the room. He ties Francis to the bed to control her, and he prefers to sit beside her on a chair. Zach wakes up in the middle of the night and gets dressed and goes out comfortably, but he suddenly meets his mother in front of him, who has turned into a monster, and he and Nissan attack them. The one who was trying to control her is able to remove her and take her outside, and Alice prefers to cry while she is sitting on the stairs, and asks him to kill her and take her and enter her a room in the farm, and he locks her in it. As for Alice, she enters Zach's room while she is crying, and he takes Zach in his lap, and then the next morning, Zach goes to the room where his mother is and finds her turned into a monster and tries to comfort him. He recalls that he asked about it, and at that time he was in the laboratory receiving the result of the sample, and the doctors in the laboratory told him that they were making more sense because there were many things that were not understood in the sample. But the most important point is that he should know that this water source is dangerous and he should stay away from it because it is very harmful and he should not use it. He runs quickly after hearing their words and tries to reach Charlie, but an employee in his office says he left, and at this time, he was still reaching for the times she tells him that he spoke to her and told her about the result of a water sample, and needs I don't understand. Charlie tells her that he will need her help so that they can convince her husband to hide the water issue. Nissan also sells the land so that they can succeed and take a commission. He calls Charlie's office every once in a while, but he can't get through. And Al-Sufi, the secretary, says that he went to the April farm. At that time, Charlie will be standing in front of Nissan's house, and the dogs attack the Yen Times. And Charlie hides in the room where Francis is, and he finds it dark. He is fond of a match, but Francis attacks him. On the other hand, He returns a vitriol from Libra, and my hands have a Nissan to eat for him and his sister, but Zag. Brame is far away, and he enters the room for his sister to get food for her, in front of the supermarket canned, and a clean water from afar, and then he goes to the room where his mother is, and he finds her dead, and he quickly comes out and attacks him. When he finds water with him different from the one in the house, and he tells him that this water made them sick, and he doesn't want to be sick like them, and at this time, he attacks Alice in her room, after he is about to take pills like his father, but that succeeds at the last moment by hitting him on the head from behind, and puts Alice in the cupboard, and he asks her not to get out of it, somewhat up to her. And Nissan decides to lock the doors with wood and nails. It connects to the one who breaks into the house, but he hits him on the head from behind, and throw it on the side, and he goes to attack Zach, who was trying to get out of the house, and he surpasses Elaine and tries to pick Zach up. After the house started collapsing, he pulled and ran outside, trying to save his mother, but he finds her body turning into a liquid, and he runs away while he is sad and crying for her. And the house collapses on the one who catches that man, but that succeeds as he distances himself and out quickly before the house collapses completely, and Zakir al-Arabiya rides with Elaine and Alice. The news will be announced on television, and everyone knows the truth, but they didn't know that the strange liquid was still spreading among them. And don't forget to subscribe to the Ladybug Synopsis channel.